I'm the curator of the Cartoon Art Museum, and this is an exhibition we've wanted to do for a long time, almost probably as long as I've been involved with the museum, just because there's so many talented artists. It's such a great community. And talking to people like Joaquin and talking to artist friends, we realized this the scope is so large. This is something that we could do every gallery, multiple floors for years and not cover the entire subject. So we worked with the resources that we had readily available, and we put together what I think is a nice starting point. So I hope people will be inspired by this, that they'll collect some books, they'll read, they'll do some research online or here and find new favorite artists. And one of the artists who was instrumental to this is my friend Rina Ayuyang, and I've known her probably nearly 20 years, and we have a lot of friends in common here in the Bay Area cartooning community. And her recent success, she had an amazing graphic novel called Blame This on the Boogie, which is an autobiographical comic. Just last year, she released her new Filipino noir San Francisco comic, The Man in the Macintosh Suit. So that was that kind of felt like this is the time to get going and put this exhibition together. And she and I talked about what our scope should be, what we wanted to include. And coincidentally, she had just done these amazing banners with the San Francisco Arts Commission. So if you were on Market Street last year, if you were taking the bus, that's one of these things that I love about San Francisco and the arts, is they decided rather than have a department store advertisement or something, they love working with local artists in the community to put out this amazing new artwork. So Rina, it took about a half second for her to realize, I want to talk about family, I want to talk about community. She wanted to talk about organizations, geography, and just the history of Filipino culture in San Francisco. And it's such a great fit for this exhibition space that we were able to put these giant, larger-than-life banners up here. Larger than Rina banners too. She's she actually, we didn't. We should have staged a photo of her next to these banners, but we were really excited to have that. And she and I talked about contemporary artists that we wanted to feature. So people like Linda Berry, who is a big inspiration on her. Bong Redila, who is doing amazing. I love that he is still doing traditional media. So he's still ink on paper. We've got a lot of artists who have, contemporary artists who've switched over to digital artwork now. But Bong is doing this amazing ink on paper work. And we were fortunate to have him here as a guest last month for our opening reception. And he and I could have talked classic comics all day. He most recently he did a Popeye story for a new Fantagraphics collection of E.C. Segar, the original Popeye artist, and you can see that in his artwork. He and I talked about another artist who's on display here today, Edward Gorey, and just he loves line work, he loves drawing, and that just really comes through in all of his art. So Rina and I came up with a wish list, and we got just about everybody we wanted. We have Martin Sandretta, we've got Tintin Pantoja, who actually lives and works in the Philippines. And this is a really exciting display, actually, because this is a book that's not out yet. This is a book that she is what we say pitching. So she's trying to find a publisher for it. It's disappointed so many little kids who visited and wanted to leave with a copy of Unicorn Sword, but it's not available yet. We hope it will be but very cool. She's very much inspired by manga and anime, so she's doing a really fun story. Here we've got Trinidad Escobar, who is another wonderful local talent, artist, activist, poet. She's amazing. So she, again, another artist who uses very traditional media, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about working here and displaying this artwork is you can get up close and you can see this material up close. You can really see the artist's hand in the work, and that's something that we really love about what we do here. So that was the part of the exhibition that I worked on with Rina Ayuyang, and we came up with, like I said, a list of local and not so local contemporary artists that we wanted to feature. And that was building off of the exhibition that I assembled with our friend Manuel Auad. So I'm going to tell you about him. He is a San Francisco-based publisher, incredible person. I spent a great day with him several months ago, going through his collection, getting some of his stories, and just hearing about what it was like to be here as these artists were coming over to the United States, as they were welcomed into the American comic book industry. So backtracking a little bit, so I've known Manuel about, again, almost as long as I've been in San Francisco. So he's a very important, influential, and kind of behind the scenes. He's a very quiet, reserved person who has just quietly published a lot of amazing books. He worked very closely with an artist named Alex Toth to produce some very beautiful books in the late 1990s, early 2000s. But he was, most importantly for this exhibition, he was here in San Francisco. He was established. He was making a name for himself as a historian, as a publisher. And he was here, and this is so important, and I know for my own family, I know it's important to all immigrant families, having someone here who can show you the ropes, who can help you with setting up a bank account, finding an apartment, just giving you kind of that big brother advice you need. And Manuel was that person to so many artists, and that was really a really fun thing. And that's one of many things we spoke about when I was visiting his house and picking out artwork for this exhibition. So I'll mention he focused particularly on three of his friends, Alfredo, Alcala, Alex Nino, and Nestor Redondo, and that's just because those were the artists he happened to have the most representations in his collection. Like I said, we would love to have 10 floors of this building, and we could spend years, and I hope this is the first of many, so I hope we'll get to revisit this and come up with new versions of this. And I'm already there's been a lot of interest in maybe doing this as a traveling show, so we're talking about other artists that we can add and different approaches that we can take. So I'll just show a few pieces in here. And again, I encourage you to walk around and just appreciate the beauty of the artwork that they've created, and just the different styles that are on display. So you can see, and they cover so much amazing subject matter, even going back to when they were publishing in the Philippines in the 1960s. So they were doing Gothic romance. They're doing scary stuff. They're doing fantasy artwork. In the 70s, you can see when they discover Star Wars and how that's having an impact on their work. Characters like Conan the Barbarian, stories from the Bible. Breaks my heart that they were working on a King Arthur story that never got published. So I'm going to ask Manuel just how much of that artwork is out there, what we can track down. We've got basically the Filipino equivalent of the Sunday newspaper page. So imagine what you see in a typical Sunday newspaper. You might expect Garfield or Kathy, but in the 1960s, if you were opening up your newspaper, you got this amazing fantasy artwork from Alex Nino. And yeah, and again, these artists were really, they were big players in the Philippines in the 50s and especially in the 1960s. So they were running publishing houses. They were heads of studios. They were the biggest players in the whole comic book industry over there. So it's not surprising that they made it onto the radar of American publishers. So the short version of this is that DC Comics in the 1970s was struggling. So they were not, they weren't at the top of their game at that point, and this is a story that still resonates today. So they were looking at cost-cutting measures. They were looking at ways that they could be more efficient, help the bottom line. And someone suggested, we've got these amazing, talented, hardworking artists in the Philippines, and they can draw, we've heard they can draw more quickly than our American artists. They will probably work at a reduced pay rate compared to what we pay for the American artists. So they went on a recruiting trip, and they brought, they were knocked out by what they saw, obviously, if they're seeing artwork like this, and they realized that's going to be a good fit for superhero comics, sword and sorcery comics. If they're doing horror comics, mystery comics, they realized this is going to be a good fit. Alfredo Alcala, who created Voltar, kind of a Conan the Barbarian style character, obviously his skills were going to translate very well to the American comic book market. So there's a good story I've heard about Alfredo Alcala. So his supervising editor, Joe Orlando, is trying to get a sense of, he knew these guys were fast, and he wanted to know just how fast they were. So he asked Alfredo, how many pages do you think you can do a week? Just if I'm trying to figure out like how much more efficient we're going to be if we bring you guys over. And so keep in mind, a typical American comic book has kind of an assembly line production. So you've got a writer who comes up with the script. You've got a pencil artist. The pencil artist works with an ink artist who embellishes that artwork. You've got a letterer. So usually it's kind of a factory system, kind of an assembly line. But Joe Orlando knew that these artists wrote their own material. They drew it. They inked it. They lettered it. And again, he wanted to find out how many pages Alfredo Alcala could do a week. So Alfredo said, I can do 40. Okay. And I noticed you coughing over there. Yeah, so a very fast, especially in the 1970s, a very fast American artist might do 10 pages a week, tops. And that's 10 pages just as one part of the assembly line would be very impressive. If you just penciled 10 pages a week, that's incredibly fast. If you penciled and inked 10 pages a week, that's pretty ridiculous, and you're not going to be a letterer on top of that. So Joe was surprised, and he said, well, no, okay, you probably just think I'm talking about pencils or a very rough pencil job on that. And Alfredo says, okay, well, what do you want? And Joe Orlando says to him, no, we're talking pencils and inks, maybe letters. So how many pages? And Alfredo says 40. He says, okay, maybe we need to be clear. We're DC Comics. We're the best publisher. And he pulled out some comic books by artists like Neil Adams and Kurt Swan, just to show him this is what we publish. This is what these comics look like. This is what we do. And we want you to produce work on this quality, okay? So just so we're clear. And Alfredo flips through the comics, looks at them, and says, you want me to do this? Joe says, yes. Okay. So he says, how many pages can you do a week? He says, just this amount of detail. Right. And he says, 80. So I think they figured it out, and he produced closer to 40 pages a week, like he said he could, and most of the other artists who came over had that work ethic, and that was great because they wanted to come to the United States for the opportunities that represented. They were supporting family back home. They were bringing family over. But we've got some amazing artwork on display. Again, we've got a range of styles. We've got, again, they were doing historical fiction. They were doing contemporary, 60s style romance comics. Just beautiful line work. And again, I love that you can just zoom right in. You can see the detail. You can see the brushwork they were doing. Very hardworking, amazing artists. And so this is a celebration. So we're really happy to have everybody here today. So thank you so much for organizing this and for coming out, and we really appreciate it. And yeah, enjoy your visit.